Well, joining me now, we have Brian Murray, senior partner at the law firm and part of the team representing Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Thanks for being here, Brian. First of all, how much of a victory is this for your team, the fact that he is no longer in El Salvador and actually in Nashville, Tennessee?
Well, of course, we're very glad that he's home, and we're most of all really thrilled for Jennifer and the rest of Kilmar's family. But it's fitting that this case began with an abuse of power and is now that Kilmar's home, but only by an abuse of power.
Brian, I'm curious your reaction to the conspiracy to transport aliens and unlawful transportation of undocumented aliens charges that he is facing. What's your response to that?
Well, I'm not a criminal attorney. We are not Kilmar's criminal counsel, but I read the indictment, and honestly, it reads like a bad novel. And I think anyone who's looking at this case, who's been watching this play out, would agree that this is a political and vindictive prosecution.
Brian, has anyone on your team talked with Abrego Garcia? And if so, what's he said?
Well, we're working on that right now. We learned about Kilmar's return just like the rest of the country did, and we're working on the logistics to get down there and visit with him for the very first time.
So here's something from the New York Times, which writes, regardless of how the case turns out, the return of Abrego Garcia suggests that the administration was, at least in some ways, feeling the heat of the 3 court orders it was facing to facilitate his freedom. The decision could be read, in fact, as the Justice Department simultaneously caving to the orders while also flexing its muscles. As Todd Blanche, the deputy AG, pointed out, the charges could render moot the lawsuit filed by Abrego Garcia's family. If that happens, it might get the White House off the hook entirely for the way in which it skirted due process in deporting him. Brian, what do you make of that? And is that why the White House went from saying, we can't bring him back, to suddenly bringing him back to the U.S.?
Well, there's no doubt the timing is quite suspicious. They've admitted they began this investigation basically in the wake of the Supreme Court decision. And sadly, it looks like this is a grand operation to save face.
All right, let me get to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who is not saying when this investigation into Abrego Garcia was opened, but Abrego Garcia, we know, was deported in March. So I'm curious, Brian, what you make of the timeline. And given the way the government has handled Abrego Garcia's case, both in the courts and the way it's played out in the media, is that going to play into his defense, do you think?
I can't say for sure. As I mentioned, we do not represent him on the criminal side, and I can't speak to that. I'm not a criminal attorney, but the timing is certainly suspect. And another issue of timing, obviously, is just yesterday, the same day that this indictment is announced, the chief of the criminal division in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Tennessee resigned. I think that's telling all on its own. All
right. Now, look, and I'm going to ask one more question. And granted, I know you're not a criminal attorney, but just your sense of the law here, because the Washington Post points out at yesterday's conference, Bondi also took the unusual step of publicly accusing Abrego Garcia of other uncharged crimes, including soliciting nude photos of a minor and playing a role in the murder of a rival gang member's mother. Asked why, if prosecutors had evidence to back up those claims, they had not pursued a case in court, Bondi sidestepped the question. So just big picture, what do you make of these accusations and their credibility?
Zero credibility. This administration has proven to have zero credibility across the board. The key word in what you just read is uncharged. They are throwing everything they can at Kilmar to win the political war, and that is shameful when this is a real legal matter and a real person's life.
Can you give me a sense of how the family is doing, though? The fact that he is back on U.S. soil, has that lifted their spirits?
Yes, I think so. I think that they are obviously excited to be able to see him and to visit with him. But of course, there's this new uncertainty clouding things.
For sure. Brian Murray, thank you for talking.